So it's a journey guided by all these things. The setting of the story, it starts in 1464, so the 100 Years' War has just ended, leaving France and Britain in a bit of a mess. Britain is descending into the Wars of the Roses. King Henry VI has just been deposed by King Edward, but no one quite knows who the king is. So England is a bit of a no man's land. It's also the coldest winter anybody can remember. This is the time of the Little Ice Age when the climate changed. We're all worried about climatic warming now, but in the 1460s the climate was plunging down into an extremely cold period. So it was a bleak, cold period for anybody to be wandering around. But yet that is the time when this adventure takes place. Before I read you a bit, there's just one final thing I need to say about the story, and that's about the ages of the characters. Looking around the room, I can see that quite a few people here, like me, are rather grey-haired. I'm glad that I can see some young people in the audience too, which is great. But I think there are probably too many young people in the media, too many young heroes. So what I've done is I've written a book with a middle-aged hero. Thomas Dearham, who is the narrator of the story, is about 50 when the story starts. His other companions, another one, Francois Villon, is a bit younger but has had a hard life and looks older. And the third of the main characters is Christian Rosenkreuz, who claims to be about 100. We never really know how old he is really, but clearly he's not a young man. And I've said to Eric, when he's negotiating the film rights, I want Harrison Ford, George Clooney, and I want one of those actors who plays wizards with a long grey beard. You know. Those are the people I want, so he's got to get them. I can see it now. They'll be great. This is an adventure for the third age. And I'm sorry for you, the young people here. You'll just have to bear with me on that one. But anyway, so it's a medieval adventure with philosophy, with religion, with ideas, the worldview, and so on. I'm going to read you a bit of it. I'm going to read chapter 1. It's not a very long chapter. When I wrote the book, it seemed like a good place to start, and I hope it will be a good place to start now. It'll give you the background anyway. So I'll just read you chapter 1. So chapter 1, August the 15th, 1464. It was a good thing that the Pope died at Ancona. Not that I didn't like His Holiness. I counted him a friend, even though he made me serve him, and never gave me the indulgence he promised. No doubt he would have freed and pardoned me eventually, had he lived. I liked the Pope, and wished him no harm. It was the place of his dying that was a good thing, and the time, not the death itself. Had he died at Rome, I might never have got away. Had he crossed the sea and begun his great venture, we might all have been slaughtered by the Turks. And, having been nearly killed by the Turks already, that was something I was keen to avoid. So, dying at Ancona was the best thing His Holiness could have done. Even before Pope Pius died, his plans were falling apart. The rabble he called a crusade had mostly gone back to where they came from. As soon as they heard the sad news, the papal courtiers did the same, heading back to Rome before a new pope could be chosen. Pius's closest retainers stayed with his body, but only so that they could pilfer his belongings. How they must have wished that he had died at the Vatican, where they could have looted his private apartments. In Ancona, in that bare room in a borrowed palace, there was little to steal. Even so, I knew that I must take something to fund my escape. The low vaulted room was dimly lit. There was a lamp at the bedside, a few guttering candles elsewhere. A couple of servants attended the Pope's body, furtively searching him while they laid his limbs straight. Others were going through his baggage, turning out clothes and vestments, stripping them of embroidery or cloth of gold. I quickly looked around. On a table near the Pope's deathbed was the book I had been reading to him, a new translation of Plato's Timaeus. In the rush to grab something of value, it had been ignored by everyone. I was surprised that Patrizzi, the Pope's secretary, had not taken it, as he resented the service I did for his friend and master. All the way to Ancona, I'd been reading bits of the book at the Pope's bedside, so I knew it was as dull as anything of that sort could be. But it was neatly written in the fancy Italian style, and would bring me a good price from the right buyer. I've sold books before, and travelled far on the proceeds. It's just a matter of finding a wise fool who will pay well for what he cannot understand. I picked the book up and slipped it under my tunic, and in doing so saw something even more valuable. There on the table, concealed by the book, was the fisherman's ring, the symbol of the Pope's office, the seal Pius used on all his letters and pronouncements. His fingers were so bent and swollen that he could not wear the ring. It had been hung round his neck on a single silken cord, but towards the end his skin was so inflamed he could not bear the cord, and had begged his secretary to remove it. Even Patrizzi was not so horsey as to actually wear the Pope's ring, so he must have put it down after sealing a letter and forgotten about it. Without thinking what I was doing, I slipped the ring onto my finger, turning it so that the seal of St. Peter faced inwards. There are old tales about rings and their power. They can cure wounds, grant wishes, make a man invisible, let him assume the shape of any creature, render the speech of birds and beasts intelligible. Maybe it was the strangeness of the moment, with the Vicar of Christ dead in bed nearby, or the pleasure I got from taking those things before Patrizzi did. Whatever the reason, I felt transformed by the ring, filled with confidence and power. I knew what to do and how to do it. The ring would help me escape. It would get me to England, where I would settle, leave my past behind, and make something of myself. There was a desk in the next room with pens and parchment and ink ready mixed, and letters half written and laid out for finishing. Nearby was a leather bag for documents, stamped with the crossed keys and triple crown of the Pope's crest. I chose an unfinished letter that began with a long preamble from His Holiness, then, as neatly as I could, wrote some lines telling all who read them to give assistance to one Thomas O'Dankano, wherever he might pass and whatever he might need. That is not my real name. I am Thomas Derham, bastard son of an English soldier who caused no end of trouble with his lies and deception. I've tried to be more honest than he was, especially in this account of my adventures. If I have used false names or worn disguises, it was because someone made me, or because it was necessary. And my escape from Ancona was absolutely necessary. As I melted red wax onto a corner of the letter and pressed the ring into it, I felt rather pleased with myself and my new name. I heard wailing from the next room. Others had arrived, more servants and hangers-on, competing in grief with those who had watched the Pope die. Soon the bishop's palace would be full of scavengers. It was too late to return the fisherman's ring. I slipped it back on my finger and looked around for something else to steal. All I could see was a silk cloth artfully painted to show all the countries of the world. The Pope had been studying it in his bed, looking at the lands lost to the Saracens, dreaming of leading an army to reconquer them. We all have our dreams, and if it would have taken a miracle to get the Pope on his feet again and fit enough to lead an army, then who but the Pope is most likely to be granted such a miracle? But there was no miracle. His illness took his course and took his life, and I took the map. It folded up small and went into the leather messenger's bag, along with the book I had taken earlier. So there I was, with the book, the ring, and the map, dressed in the fine livery of a papal servant, armed with a false name and a passport, ready to make my escape into the warm Italian night. All the stories I've ever been told begin in such a way, with the hero setting off on some quest or other, about to make his way through the world, beset by troubles and difficulties. Well, I'm no hero, and I intended no quest. All I wanted was to get back to England, to find me a good wife and a soft bed and a dry roof, to settle in some quiet corner and never venture out of it. I'd been everywhere, or so I thought. The only place I wanted to go was home. I thought I'd earned a few comforts after the life I'd had. But philosophers tell us that the wheel of fortune never stops turning. It rolls onward, raising some men high, crushing others, dragging most of it behind us like dogs tied to a wagon. As for my love, you can judge for yourself. This is no story, it's what really happened.